You know, since the debut of the latest episode of Outsiders, I've been thinking, this shit makes no sense. But also, how cool is it that returning writers are getting power-ups that we wish they got in show, or actually becoming writers themselves? It reminded me of something I saw one day while scrolling through the fan wiki, a series of figures and later stories called Super Imaginative Chogokin, or S.I.C for short. These were figures of Kamen Riders and other Ishinomori characters that were hyper-realistic and a bit over-designed for my liking, but that's besides the point. Though they started as, figures, they also got their own stories, and in said stories, returning characters would get new forms or even become writers. Now don't that shit just sound familiar? And since my Outsiders video is my most popular non-meme video, why don't we look at the Outsiders at home? For our first story today, we go to Kamen Rider Black RX, with a continuation of Kotaro's story, so it's a sequel to the sequel. Basically, after the end of RX, Shadow Moon is resurrected again, but this time, his name is White RX. Or another RX. Anyway, him and Kotaro get into a bit of a squabble before Nobuhiko uses his newly found white power to beat the Black Man. Rips out his King Stone. He combines Kotaro's Kidney Stone with his and becomes the Creation King, which is also called another Shadow Moon, and I'm just saying, another writers for Showa would be fucking awesome. Anyway, Kotaro somehow takes his stone back and becomes Black RX because he was actually black in his earlier fight for some reason, and just sort of wins. Yeah, he wakes up and he's left wondering if it was real or not. This story was kind of lame, I'm not gonna lie to you. But I do like White RX. I think Nobuhiko should have become a writer after his sacrifice in RX. So actually becoming one here is cool, even if it's not as a good guy. And his Creation King form is quite cool, and if it looks familiar to you, that's because there is a red Shadow Moon. He's only appeared in games and stage shows, but it's cool to see influences from S.I.C being brought into the rest of the Kamen Rider. Kamen Rider Shin is a movie I'm not a big fan of. It didn't need to be as long as it was. It really dragged at times, but that said, his story doesn't have a proper ending. There was supposed to be a Shin TV show, but ultimately that just fell through. And that's where this story comes from. The beginning of the end of the beginning. Decades after the ending of his movie, Shin is brainwashed by the villains from said movie and becomes a killer for them. Meanwhile, after an accident, Shin's son Shin, yes, his name is Shin with 2 eyes. That's gonna get confusing, so I'm just gonna call him Junior. Anyway, Junior finds a destroyed Cyclone, which is Ichigo's bike, with a battle suit reminiscent of Ichigo, so it's possible that in this canon Ichigo was killed, though I think it's more likely that it was a Shocker Rider, but yeah. Anyway, he just decides to wear it, because why not? He also calls himself Kamen Rider Shin, with 1 eye, so character development. Anyway, after that, Junior starts throwing hands with his dad, and that's where the story ends. So that's twice Shin has gotten a story that sort of just ends. Just wait, he's gonna get his own 35 years after movie, and it'll end mid-fight scene. With that aside, I want to talk about Junior, because this man puts on his own pants for once and thinks he's a writer. And that's hilarious. I actually do like his design. The S.I.C style, though not my cup of tea, actually does fit Shin quite well, and Junior with the belt and pants looks cool to me. There's not much else I can say besides Shin joins the long line of dad writers who beat their children. Our final story tonight comes from one of my favorite seasons of Kamen Rider, Blade. Right, so a year after Kenzaki becomes the second Joker, Mutsuki graduates from high school, and everyone celebrates. Then he reveals he hasn't been accepted into any colleges, and suddenly the celebration ends. But before things can get too awkward, Blade breaks down the front door and throws hands with Hajime. But don't worry, because Tachibana shows up and just starts unloading the clip. Turns out they were researching how to turn an undead into a human because Tachibana just can't accept his friend's choice to live an existence worse than death. Anyway, this involved the chameleon undead since he, just like the Joker, can use the power of all undead, but naturally he escapes and instead of winning the battle fight on the spot, he decides to become Blade and fight the closest Joker, aka Hajime. And he's not fucking around, mind you. He became Blade. He's using all of his powers. The chameleon undead beats up everyone. He forces Hajime to become the Joker undead, which is like the strongest undead. I'm pretty sure the Joker is even stronger than the category kings. And he still claps. I'm starting to think the Titan undead was actually a downgrade for this guy. Eventually, the real Blade shows up and seals the chameleon undead. After that, Kanzaki gives back the equipment and leaves, not wanting to start another fight, and returns to his lonely existence. But hey, Mutsuki got a letter in the post, like, right after that, and he got accepted into college! Yay! Probably like one of the fucking community colleges, but like, fuck it, you know? There's actually two different versions of this story. One where Tachibana becomes Garen King, which is another part of S.I.C that has been brought into the main franchise, and another where Mutsuki becomes Liangle Jack, which wasn't brought into the main series because just like Vegeta, Mutsuki skips forms. This story was okay, but kinda inconsequential, due to the fact that all I can read is a summary on the Writer Wiki as it's not translated. That said, I still don't feel like I'm missing out much. I just kind of wanted to talk about Garen King for a bit because it's a fucking gorgeous suit. But yeah, S.I.C isn't really a thing anymore. They haven't made any new figures or stories in ages, which is a damn shame. These novels were a great way to continue the stories of characters who we'll never see again. Whether it be because the actor fell out with Toei, did something illegal, or sadly just not with us anymore. These were nice little stories about those characters that we just might never see again. And honestly, I want them to bring these back. I can think of so many characters that we could get new stories for that otherwise is just impossible. Kiba Yuji isn't never coming back. His actor sadly passed away years ago, so we'll never get another story involving him. But could you imagine something like that? Like an S.I.C story where they make Next Orga a thing? I just think that would be awesome. I didn't even talk about half of the S.I.C novels today. There's so much for fans to discover in these fucking crazy stories, like Tackle uses X's Perfector, Ryuga's Survive form, or Kamen Rider Rebirth. Maybe I'll make another one of these if I feel like it. Until then, thank you for your company, and farewell.